Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent Lee and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Some Dare Call It Conspiracy live on X. Today is Tinfoil Confessions, Escaping the Cult of Conspiracy, Day 1000. And I thought it'd be a cool idea to mark the occasion with something special. Before I introduce my co-hosts and guests, I'm going to talk a little bit about the last 1000 days and how we got to this point. But the story really begins in 2018, when I quietly walked away from the conspiracy world. From 2018 to 2021, while I was trying to piece everything back together, I saw more and more people getting wrapped up in these conspiracy theories that I had come to see through. During the pandemic, I started to realize how dangerous it was, and I kept thinking, maybe I should say something. And then the Capitol riot on January 6th happened, and I knew then that I just couldn't keep quiet. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. But I knew that I had to say something. Now, my initial plan was to start making reaction videos on YouTube, where I would debunk conspiracy videos as I watched them. But there was something I had to do first. I had to publicly denounce my former beliefs and confront the community that I had been a part of for the previous 15 years. So in June 2021, after months of worry and procrastination, I plucked up the courage to out myself to my former friends, and I made a post on Facebook. I told my friends that I no longer considered myself a truther or conspiracy theorist. I told them I had been reassessing my beliefs for the last few years, and I've come to the realization that this New World Order, Illuminati, deep state thing is quote-unquote bullshit. I told them, look, if you want to delete me, I understand, but if you want to talk, I'm open to that. A week or so later, one of my oldest truther friends, Derek, asked me if I wanted to talk about it on his podcast, and I figured, well, why not? See, I've known this guy since we met on MySpace back in 2008, and we were good friends, so I knew it wouldn't be confrontational. I went on his show, the Truth Seeker podcast, and had a chat. I was nervous as hell, but it was a good conversation. And after that, some of his audience hit me up with follow-up questions, and in response, I made my first video, Tinfoil Confessions, How Did I Believe This for 15 Years? I shared that around, and I started to see that there was an audience outside of the conspiracy world that was interested in my testimony, and were trying to understand why their friend or family member had fallen down the rabbit hole. So I started to make those reaction videos and commentary videos to explain why someone might believe some of these theories, but then explained why it was false. To be honest, I didn't really like being on camera. It didn't feel very natural to me. So I started thinking about a podcast. And after a few months, I met Neil Sanders, and we had a great conversation on my channel. After that chat, I knew this is the guy. So I messaged him and I pitched him the idea about the podcast. He said, yeah. He pitched the name. We both figured out the format. And in April 2022, Some Dare Call It Conspiracy was born. And here we are today. So with that, I want to introduce my co-hosts, Neil Sanders and Steve. Neil, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, not bad. Ticking along, falling apart slowly as I get older and older. If I yelp out in pain or anything, it's not an existential crisis. It's my back. So, but on the whole, pretty good. Just to say though, Brent, that is, I thought you were dead brave. Like the reason I contacted you on Twitter, which I was barely on at the time, I never contacted anybody. It was because I saw your video, and I thought that guy is going to get some fucking stick. But I thought respect, just huge respect for attacking it, or not attacking it, but approaching what you're doing in the way that you were doing as well. It wasn't angry, it wasn't bitter. It was calculated, and it was, calm and measured. And and that's why I thought I want to get in touch with this guy, because he's a smart cat, basically.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks. Right. Let's introduce Steve, aka Brian Kirby. People might know him as the conspiracist flat earther that no one seems to recognize as satire. Steve, how you doing?
Good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, wicked. Wicked.
I totally second Neil's sentiments, by the way. It is extremely brave what you're doing, and really important. And like Neil said, the way you approach it with the patience is exactly what's needed. It'd be very easy to just go, you lot are a bunch of, whatnot, but do one and just belittle them. But no one's ever come off winning an argument by calling someone stupid and them agreeing, agreeing with that sentiment. So it's, I mean, how do you feel? With the 1,000 days have gone, it's it wasn't just yesterday now. How's the last 1,000 days been for you?
Yeah, it feels like it was yesterday, but it feels like I've always been doing this now.
Sure. Because
I've just been doing it almost every day practically.
Sure.
It's been so surreal though, the amount of things that, say, me and Neil have done, the opportunities that we've both had now to share our experience and share our perspective it's just been mad, really. Even last night we both went to see Dom Jolly on his conspiracy tourist tour. That was great. Totally surreal. Walked in there, walked up to the ticket office and was I'm on the list, Brent Lee.
Nice.
Mad. Yeah, it's crazy. Would you mind introducing yourself to everyone? Let them know exactly who you are, what you do.
Sure. I mean, my name's Steve. Simply, I'm a comedian in that I make comedy. I'm not. I don't. It's not my full-time occupation yet. But it's That's. I've been making a mockumentary about these started off really mainly flat earthers for the last. Well, it actually started just before the pandemic, and it's what started off as sort of episodic 10-minute shows. I thought, you know what? I just feel like I want to make a piece of work rather than sort of just, ticking by making the odd video, which is why I do less and less of those little videos these days, really, because I just want to, I like the idea of creating a piece of work. But I didn't get into this from a point of view of ever being a conspiracy theorist, or I wasn't involved in the debunker community before this. I met them all sort of through this, and I had no particular. I think I saw that Flat Earther documentary on Netflix, and I was like, the guy bouncing the golf balls on the hammers. I was like, he's a beauty. He's an absolute beauty. He's the spokesperson for Flat Earth, and he's standing there bouncing. Do you know the guy I mean? He's standing there bouncing balls off of hammers, and it's like, he's the best man for the job. That really tells you something about their community. They've all decided amongst them, let's put Nathan. Let's make him be the face. And I just thought, he's got a lot of value, and I think it's got a bit. I've always had quite a fun occupation where I've done loads of sort of performance bartending and stuff. So I'm used to being on stage and on camera, and I've just, sort of found something. Yeah, I just love doing it now. Making videos in general. I've got loads of other stuff written that's nothing to do with conspiracies. So I'm not coming, like I say, from the point of view of any involvement before. But obviously now I'm quite well connected with it. It's fascinating, the psychological point of view. I think that's why I'm into it. But at the same time, it's I have to dip in and out of it because there's only so much. I believe anything now, to be honest. As in, I believe that people, because my friends all know what I do. Obviously, they sort of say to me, "Have you heard this conspiracy, that conspiracy?" Like, I'm like, nothing will surprise me anymore. Absolutely nothing. It's
Well, you really do. You do portray like this character very well, like Brian Kirby. Like it's fantastic.
I mean, I'm not a
right.
turning back to or anything. I've always been a very deadpan sort of bartender. And
it's natural then, mate.
I think it is. Yeah, I think a lot of people seem to sort of go, "Yeah, this is what you should be doing, mate." So, I'm happy, and I've met loads of lovely people, and I've told your story to a handful of people as well. Just in the context of what I've heard from you. Your experiences and how it's a lot of time you spent in it and stuff like that, and it, it's helpful to see everyone these days. Everyone's got a story about a friend, a family member, a colleague who they've pretty much lost, for lack of a better term, due to this stuff. Because it can be so divisive when people are so invested in it, and it's sad because it can completely turn people, as completely turn people's lives around, can't it?
Yeah. Well, we're going to try and deal with the problem tonight. We're going to talk about what is responsible for the rise of conspiracism, but I'd also want to speak about what are the solutions to this problem that we're in. So I'm going to now introduce our guests. Mike Rothschild, can you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself to everyone?
Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Rothschild. As I'm sure you all know, no relation to the Rothschild banking family. Lord Jacob, who recently passed, was not my great uncle. Everyone. I'm a journalist. I'm an author. I've written 3 books. I wrote a book about the Rothschild myth that came out last year now, I guess. I wrote a book about QAnon that came out in 2021. I do a lot of writing, a lot of speaking. I've been speaking at conferences lately. I was just at a conference this weekend. Don't quite know what time it is or where I am, but that's okay. And I'm just super thrilled to be here and super thrilled to, talk about a really important milestone on a journey of getting out of a toxic movement. I think a lot of people say they've stopped believing in this stuff. They don't, it doesn't mean anything to them anymore, but they don't really do the work to rectify the harm that's being done to other people. And I think it's really great that Brad has created this community around trying to do this work, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thanks, man. And how are you today?
Doing well. Just working on stuff and trying to do my bit to push back against the nonsense that everyone seems to know somebody who is involved in some of this stuff or all of this stuff. And, a lot of days it feels like a perpetually uphill battle, but somebody needs to do it, because if we don't, then the historical record is only the nonsense, and we don't want to let that happen.
Just to give an impression, Mike, well, what sort of things did you see following the death of Jacob Rothschild?
Oh, he's been, he's gone to be with his Lord and Master Satan.
Was that David Icke?
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
I bet that was a Dan. I bet that was a Dan.
Yeah, I'm sure it was plenty of other ones. Just all the myths about the family being regurgitated, that they fund both sides of every war, that they have $500 trillion, that they
control. They've got all that money, but nobody knows where it is because they've hidden it, obviously.
Right. And they're not on. They're not on any of the the Forbes richest list. Oh, because those are fake lists. There's always something. But it's really the same myths that get regurgitated, and then you go all the way back to the Waterloo myth that Nathan Rothschild knew the outcome of the battle before everyone else, and he used that knowledge to make enough money to take control of the British Empire. All of that stuff. It's just the same stuff over and over and over again.
Even the famous quote isn't actually proven to be attributed to amateur Rothschild. What was it? If you give me let me control the money, I can, or who makes the laws, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And actually in Jewish Space Lasers, the book I wrote about the Rothschilds, I tried to find where that quote came from. And it's a long story. It's been reprinted in a bunch of different places, but the most popular usage of it is in the book The Creature from Jekyll Island from, I think it was 1994, which is the famous Federal Reserve book. That attributes it to a congressional record, but it's not correct. G. Edward Griffin, who wrote the book, gives it the wrong attribution. So I went digging through the congressional record to see if I could actually figure out who he was trying to cite. And it turns out that a bunch of different congressmen said it at some point during the 1930s in the wake of the Depression, but it probably came from an even earlier congressional hearing from 1911, I believe. And even then, it was probably a sort of a repackaging of a quote that was even older than that. So it's one of those things where it has a bunch of different origins and none of them are correct, but it's not something Mayer ever said. Mayer never controlled the British money supply. Like, I don't even know what that really means. It's just something that people have heard a lot, and it's just kind of become enshrined in the popular discourse on the right and the far left too about the Rothschilds.
Neil has a theory. You just mentioned G. Edward Griffin. Mm-hmm. He thinks that the G stands for gangster. Do you have any idea what it might stand for?
I don't know. Actually, no, I don't know what it stands for. But it's, let's take a guessing, Zanny. And he's still alive. He's in his mid 90s. He was just on InfoWars.
Yeah, he was in InfoWars the other week, wasn't he? I was he's just ranting and being genuinely unpleasant.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I'm
going to also now introduce the next guest as well, so we can then kind of get into a little bit of a roundtable discussion. Mike Wendling, please unmute yourself and give us a quick introduction.
Hi. Well, listen, first of all, let me just say congratulations, guys. And building this, doing what you're doing, speaking out. And your podcast is, well, for me, it's essential listening.
Thank you.
You guys have done some really awesome stuff lately. You mentioned Dom Jolly. You got to listen to that episode, along with the chemtrail series. Oh my gosh. It was fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I'm talking to you from Chicago. I am the BBC's digital reporter based here in Chicago, and I particularly cover disinformation, conspiracy theories. I was one of the people who founded in early 2020 the BBC News disinformation team. Sort of it has evolved since then, but at that time we were sort of thinking, oh, there's a presidential election coming up, and maybe we should be covering some of this stuff that might be coming out of the mouth of the president at the time. And then 3 weeks later, everybody was in lockdown. Things developed quickly. And I would also say, I'm sure that most of the people on here have come across Mike's book, but it's fascinating. It's so detailed and well researched.
Thank you.
You have to pick it up. I've corresponded with Mike quite a bit, and he's like an invaluable source. So I will always sing the praises of all of your work. But the one interesting thing that's sort of debunked there is that the title of the book, Jewish Space Lasers. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene never actually said that phrase. Isn't that interesting? It was a headline. It's just interesting how these things sort of like flow and become sort of picked up. I've been sort of looking into obviously U.S. politics. I have a book out in 3 months looking at how conspiracy has become not just a sort of background noise here in the American political scene, but a major tune, and how it's crept steadily into the mainstream, particularly on the right and the far right. And that book is called Day of Reckoning. It's I'm very sort of interested to see where you guys would take it from here. And I don't know if we'll be talking about the Kate Middleton conspiracies, but there's a long list of things to talk about.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah, I keep hearing little things about this now.
There's all things going on, isn't there? Apparently, the black covering on the flag was significant the other day. Now, some people, like, experts will tell you, oh, it's a rain covering. They put it over it when it's raining or whatever. But apparently not. Apparently, it was some sort of symbolization. 2 black horses and a white horse, although nobody picked up on and death rode in on a pale horse. Like, which again just shows that often these people aren't very good at coming up with conspiracies, which is a bit of a shame, really. But hey ho. But
yeah, I always love the ones that like people miss. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, why did you miss that one out? There's a great conspiracy to be had. I don't really want to give anybody ideas, but I'm sure you guys spot them all the time. We are pattern spotting organisms. That's what humans are.
Yeah. There's loads. This is one of the slightly funny things that we do when we do a deep dive and stuff. Is we always find something that's like, hang on, that's a better conspiracy than the conspiracy that's out there. More plausible. It's a bit sexier. There's lizards in it or whatever. And and people always seem to miss it, really. It's because a lot of it seems to be repetitive. And it's just like what you were saying earlier about the Marjorie Taylor Greene supposed quote. It's like a sort of, particularly since the rise of social media and other elements of the internet, it's like a game of Chinese whispers or telephone, where informed wisdom gets passed on and becomes informed wisdom and gets passed on. And every person that you go through has their own particular lens. Like, for example, with in the Bohemian Grove thing that we did, we looked at the way that, say, John Ronson saw what he saw, the way Alex Jones saw what he saw, and the way that Mike Hansen saw what he saw. And it was very clear that they all had a very different perspective on it. Like, Jones thought it was freaky and weird and kind of worthy of reporting. But he was a really it's decadent, it's all a bit crazy and freaky. John Ronson was like, this is a bit sad and lame. This is like, it's sort of like, it's like rugby club stuff or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's all very, very sort of rather juvenile, but hey ho, whatever. Mike Hansen immediately thought that it was Satan, the literal embodiment of Satan on this planet, and that became the lens that it got viewed through, basically. And then things get added on and things get added on. I want to say one of the perfect examples of this telephone thing. Everybody will tell you that the owl represents Moloch, and it doesn't. Like, Moloch was actually represented by a bull, and as Brent pointed out on our show, there's a better conspiracy theory involving owls. Who was it? Athena or Diana
Lilith.
or Lilith? Even. There you go. Much better.
The mother of all demons.
Oh, there you go. Like, that's a far better conspiracy. We have theories about why conspiracies have got so daft, and that's what sort of particularly sort of drove me away from it. You can't ignore the rise of the internet. Like, social media, suddenly everybody's their own sort of main character, reporting, sort of interacting with the world. You're a self-facilitating media node. And, that's dangerous because basically a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing. You know what I mean?
Well,
yeah, totally.
You shouldn't be asking the average person. Like, the average person shouldn't have a platform, because think about how dumb the average person is. There are people dumber than that, because that's the average.
Exactly. Precisely. And you know where I think it actually started? Vox Pops on news. Getting the public involved in the reporting of news and making them feel that they were a part of the story. And then from Vox Pops, it became, partly because basically the audience liked it and lapped it up, and partly because, this is cheap and easy telly and it's going to fill like quite a lot of time. Start actually asking people's opinions on the news. What do you think about this? Do you think so-and-so should do this? What about this new rule? Blah, 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 blah. And again, that shifted the conversation to the point where basically news is not just news anymore. It's become like a talk show or like a almost like a feedback loop,
like a gossip column.
Exactly. It's turned into The View or something like that, hasn't it? Like, basically, and the problem is that basically, it does very well. People respond to it, and then we have the living hell of things like Gogglebox and stuff like that. And it's like, that's literally how far we've come. Like, it's completely dystopic.
Well, the U.S. media does the exact same thing. We every election now we obsess over what do people in diners in rural Pennsylvania think about Donald Trump's plan to leave NATO. Like, why are we asking these people? Why do these people's opinions matter? We know what they're going to say. We know probably who they're going to vote for. I think what a lot of the sort of LA, New York, big city media is looking for is just sort of people to say dumb things that we can go, how could anybody believe that? How could anyone vote for that guy? They're so dumb. And then they incorporate it into the grievances that power them. And so many of the movements that I write about, it's powered by grievance. It's powered by somebody's getting something over on me, and I'm going to fight back at them. And I think our media, certainly in the US and other places as well, is totally obsessed with that.
It's interesting what you said just there, like trying to get one over on something, because we were having a bit of a discussion about like why certain people would vote for certain candidates. They're obviously going to be sort of, well, if you looked at the facts, they're not actually going to be beneficial for you, particularly like I'm talking about conservatives in the UK and stuff like that. And I suspect that the world is in such a place at the minute, like where some people, it's almost like a spite vote. Like, do you know what I mean? And this is almost the same with some sort of conspiracies. Like, they don't necessarily buy into every aspect of it, but a lot of them persecute people, and you can get like a lot of cachet off of that. And like, you can, it's a very easy way to feel better about yourself is to punch down, or to get some sort of schadenfreude from somebody else's misery, rather than you sort of actually making yourself happy. Do you know what I mean? It's a very, very quick dopamine response that you can basically get. And I think people exploit that. I think media companies exploit that. I think the social media companies exploit that. They know that people are, by nature, are competitive and tribal, and yeah, it can be horrible. And that can be the results.
Well, every individual facet everyone's out for their own objective, and like social media companies want you to be on their platforms. News channels want you to watch them. Politicians want you to vote for them. So it's become less about what's right to do or right to say, and more about how can I get the result I want here? How can I get the vote? How can I get the view? How can I get the subscriber?
What's interesting about the election here that's coming up is the fact that if you go back to 2016, you had, a fairly unpopular Democratic candidate, and people, to put it bluntly, were just like, hey, I'll do the fuck you thing. I'll vote for Donald Trump. That dynamic is not the same this time. You know what he's about. You know what he's going to do. And it just becomes a little bit more complicated and nuanced. And it's not necessarily the fact that, you're putting the middle finger up to the establishment because this guy's been around. He's been the president. It'll just be very interesting how that plays out. He's certainly going to be leaning into all the stuff that you guys talk about, particularly on voting, right? Conspiracies about voting. But you look at the people who are, his hype men, essentially. And they're just pumping out loads of podcasts, social media content. It's veering on conspiratorial, or sometimes just plain conspiratorial. If you look at people like the Laura Loomers of the world and the Steve Bannons, and even people like J.D. Vance, who we wrote a story about him, repeating Russian propaganda that's completely fake from a fake news website that was run out of Moscow. All this stuff not suddenly, but over the last few years, has become a real sort of driver of political interest in the way that it wasn't necessarily 20 years ago.
They realise it works, haven't they? It's the same as like you prey on people's whatever gets people going. It's like there was a period where it was, in Britain especially, and I'm sure it happens in the States, but I can only speak for us. It's like get the people who are quite sort of right wing and nationalist and sort of appeal to their anti-immigrant sentiment. And now how you've got so many people into conspiracy theories these days, it's like, right, if we play to them, we'll get them on side. It's more about just getting people to agree rather than believe in it themselves.
Yeah, and the thing that I always think about is this: in the UK, it hasn't sort of reached that mainstream. Obviously, conspiracy theories are all over the place, and people believe in this. It doesn't really have the political.
I think we've just started to, though. Just for the
there's been a couple of examples. Yeah, like there's been a couple of conservative MPs like talked about 15-minute cities. There's always sort of like talks about immigration and stuff like that, and Richard Sunak,
it could be the canary,
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Well, I hadn't even sort of thought about that with Trump and sort of the way that he's not really a politician. He's a television personality / business mogul or whatever. And he came in, and a lot of politics relies on. This is the wrong word, but honor and shame. Now, I understand that most politicians don't have either of those, but there still is a degree of basically like, oh, you lied to the House, you need to resign. Oh, you did this. There's a terrible gaffe. You got caught paying off a porn star that you'd slept with behind your pregnant wife's back. You need to resign, right? Okay. And then Trump came along and went, yeah, but what if I just didn't? What if I didn't give a shit? What if I just went, yeah, so what and what? And a certain demographic really responded to that. And, I think it's just probably the same people that sort of liked his personality, his prickly personality on television and stuff like that. But the problem is that then, it opens the floor for Boris Johnson tried it a few times with various things. Then you've got people, like Gates and Jim Jordan and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert and stuff like that, just saying outrageous stuff because it's been tested now. They can get away with it. And they know that there's an audience that will lap it up. The problem is it's just entirely irresponsible.
Yeah, so what I always think, I always compare Marjorie Taylor Greene with Andrew Bridgen, right?
Yes.
And one of those people is very, very powerful. And the other person will not be a member of parliament after the next election. That's kind of the difference politically right now. Obviously, those things are subject to change. But if you look at Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's a tremendously powerful and influential person. And it's just almost unfathomable.
What's her position again? I'm not entirely accurate myself on what she does.
So not only is she a member of the House of Representatives, but her and a gang, the House Freedom Caucus, which she's not actually officially a member of anymore, they have the power. She's also part of very sort of influential committees in the House. They are basically have the power to hold the Speaker of the House hostage because of the slim majority that Republicans have in the House. If you picked out half a dozen or a dozen of the most influential people in Congress, she definitely would be among them. And considering what she says and sort of how baked in conspiracy is, it's pretty astonishing. I can't think of many other sort of Western countries, at least, where that kind of conspiratorial thinking and extremism is so close to power.
Yeah, I've seen how much of her she has a captivated audience, doesn't she? I mean, I'm very familiar with her waffle, but I haven't. I just I try not to get too bogged down in getting angry with people like that, so I don't deep dive into it because. Yeah, but I see her audience is quite vast, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I didn't notice that she was a conspiracist before she was in politics until I heard you speaking, Mike Rothschild, on Mission Implausible.
Oh, yeah. So that Facebook post, the infamous Jewish space lasers post, again, she doesn't say that, but that was from 2018, and it was. It was deleted at some point. Nobody knew who she was. She was just a, CrossFit mom from Georgia. And I've had people ask me, you know, oh, did she invent that theory about the space laser starting the fire? You know, was she the only person who said that? And I said, no. I mean, that's like standard orthodoxy in the conspiracy theory world right now. You find that now for every single wildfire that happens. And I remember, you know, I live in Southern California in 2018. There were all kinds of conspiracy theories about what was quote really going on with the fire. Was it a laser beam? Was it some sort of, you know, green energy boondoggle gone wrong? What Marjorie Taylor Greene said in that post was something that a lot of other people were saying. And I think that's one of the reasons why she and the people like her have done so well. And I think it's really how Donald Trump really kind of found his footing in politics. He was not a politician. He was not, you know, he had no plan for anything, but he came onto the scene as a, you know, potential presidential candidate by questioning where Barack Obama was born. And again, he was not the first person to come up with that. That was a growth industry. Starting back in 2008, you had books by people like Jerome Corsi that sold a ton of copies, and that a lot of people really thought that was true, but they weren't people who were in the mainstream. They were weirdos. They were people you didn't want anything to do with. And now here's this really rich guy, and he's all over TV, and he's saying the thing that we can only think, and he can get away with it. And I want to follow that guy. And you could really see how it took off from there. It's
kind of worked for him. That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, is Marjorie Taylor Greene's career had a boom since she's doing this? Then,
well, I think she has a career because of it.
Right. Okay. So this has really helped her personally. Yeah, that's.
Oh, absolutely. She's all over. Yeah, she's all over Fox News constantly, all over Steve Bannon's podcast constantly because she does this.
A lot of these people are garnering support of people that have already got beliefs that are embedded along these lines, just to sort of keep them afloat. I mean, how no one will ever know, but how, obviously Trump didn't win the second term, but he was close and he did have the second highest. You know, but how many fewer votes would he have had if he didn't go down the conspiracy road? It was.
Oh yeah, I mean, his base loves that stuff. His base loves grievance. Feeling like everyone's out to get them, like everyone's out to get Trump. And, you know, there's that meme of you know, Trump standing there looking stern. They're not coming after me. They're coming after you, and I'm in the way. Well, in reality, Donald Trump wouldn't piss on these people if they were on fire. Yeah. But they love him. And
but it's not for politics, though, is it? It's like he's what is the wrestler guy that's just been Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
They like his character. They don't necessarily like his policies or whatever.
They don't know what they are, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and it doesn't matter. Yeah, quite.
Yeah, doesn't really have any policies that make any sense. I mean, I'm sure
I think he has vague sort of slogans and things. I mean, he certainly had the slogans when he was, you know, lock her up, build the wall, talking about the deep state and stuff like that in his campaign. Who do you, Mike, do you know who backed Marjorie Taylor Greene? Like, how did she go from being nobody to being where she is?
Well, she ran in an extremely Republican district. There was never any chance. There was never any possibility that whoever won the Republican primary there was not going to get that seat. Yeah. And in fact, I think her Democratic opponent actually dropped out of the election in 2020 for sort of weird family reasons. I'm not sure anybody ever knew why. But when she ran in the primary, you know, these Republican primaries, like, who are these people who are running? She had a lot of name recognition because she'd already been endorsing QAnon. So all of these outlets are writing about her. It's like, oh, she could be the first QAnon member of Congress, and whoever else she's running against in the Republican primary is probably some like used car dealer or, you know, local real estate guy. And they just don't have a chance because she's getting national coverage.
Wow. That's crazy.
And Mike, remind me, do you know this? Did Trump endorse her prior to that primary?
I don't remember. I don't know that he had to because she had so much name recognition.
Yeah. I mean, that's a determining factor these days, too. Trump endorses a particular Republican candidate, and it could be the more moderate candidate. It could be the more absolutely crazy candidate, but his opinion, it holds so much weight that it's hard to overcome if you are like a normal Republican, whatever that is these days, and fighting against somebody who's Trump endorsed.
Yeah. And it's he has this persona of being the ultimate winner, when of course the candidates that he's been endorsing have not done all that well. The elections that he's run in, other than 2016, the Republicans have not done well. They're constantly underperforming. I'm kind of maybe on an island about this, but I don't think he's going to do well in November. I think that the polling is way off. Which we've seen many other times before. And especially if he ends up being convicted in one of these cases, I think a lot of people are going to walk away from him and are just tired of it.
What about the sort of hardcore though? I mean, what's the sort of, if you listen to InfoWars and stuff like that, they're basically like, if he goes to prison or if he gets convicted or if he loses the election, there's going to be a right hoo-ha, isn't there? So, what's your sort of thoughts on that?
It's possible, and I think there is a group of Trump, worshipers, you could call them, who are going to go down with him no matter what. I mean, it's the authoritarian regimes tend to not end well for the people who are kind of true believers to the very end. But I think a lot of people are, even a lot of conservatives, I think are just tired of it and just tired of him, tired of losing, tired of the chaos, tired of the embarrassment. And, you can win a primary with the hardcore believers, but I don't know that you can win a general election in a country as divided as the United States with just the hardcore believers. I'm just not sure that you can.
I worry how poor Biden is that might play a factor. I mean, do you think he's going to be the candidate in the next election, really?
I do. I mean, unless something really weird happens, I think he's got it. And, I think his age is an issue, but comparing the two of them side by side, Biden's old, but Trump is like a goner. If you watch some of these speeches and you're just like, I don't understand what he's talking about. And I'm fairly fluent in Trumpese, but there's times where he's going off and I'm just like, those are just words. I don't even know if he knows what he means.
I think there's a part of me that thinks he's, he just doesn't care if he goes out in a blaze of glory because he's not got long left, like long time in life. He could have 5 years, he could have 15, but it's not going to be that long. It's all about legacy for him at this point. He's such a narcissist that it's all just a bit of a game for him. I think. I mean, I don't. I'm very aware that we get a very narrow view of any other country's politics in this country. So I don't really know about American politics. I don't tend to. But
here's the interesting thing. While this stuff leads, and I don't think like a lot of people. There will have been some coverage of this stuff, but the conspiracy aspect has been kind of like so baked in amongst Trump supporters that it has an interesting effect. Number one, if you say don't trust the voting system, it's all rigged. People don't vote, right? So you have a whole countervailing effort on behalf of the Republican Party to try and get people to vote because they don't necessarily believe that their vote's going to be counted. The other thing is, a lot of people are saying, you know what, there's going to be another riot. It'll be another January the 6th situation or whatnot. But if you look at it, the idea that there's a massive psyop out there, that the federal agents are, involved in your movement and that they're going to be causing trouble on the streets, that narrative has taken hold so much that people are afraid of going onto the streets anymore. You look at when Trump was indicted in New York and in Florida, and his supporters some of his supporters at least, were saying, come out onto the streets, protest. Of course, they weren't going to come out in New York, Democrat-controlled town, loads of police, not sort of Trump territory. But they didn't even come out in Florida in any huge numbers, a few hundred at the most. So, I would not want to give a prediction about what's happening in the election. I personally, could see it go either way. But in the event that Donald Trump does lose, it's hard to sort of imagine what it's going to be like, the reaction. And at one level, that's kind of comforting and thinking, oh, well, there won't be sort of masses of people in the storming of the Capitol again. On the other hand, people tend to take things into their own hands under situations like that. And that's potentially even more frightening and potentially more violent than the alternative.
They'll be more prepared this time as well. Last time it was, I mean, I don't really know. I'm not part of their forums, but yeah, it's interesting. I mean, is Biden as slow and bumbly as we're led to believe over here? Like, because you hear about all this sort of stuff, but I have no idea really. Is he incoherent?
He's always been a little bit of a gaffe machine. He's had he had the stutter, and he's never been the most engaging public speaker. So I think some of what we're seeing is kind of just him being him, and I think some of it is probably age. But I think on balance, he's done a good job with a really difficult hand in a really difficult time with a Congress that is totally broken. A lot of the things he's tried to do have been blocked, and he's also very kind of old school Democratic. I don't know that he really vibes much with younger demographics. I think he's done a good job. I do question his age. He'll be 85 at the end of his second term. That's old. Do I think he can do the job? Yeah, I do. But compared to Trump, he's like, he's like Adonis compared to Trump.
I did enjoy the dark Brandon memes as well.
Yeah.
Because I thought they were quite witty, and B, I just thought that's quite, as you say, he's not really very appealing to the youth, but that kind of sort of thing does. And also he sort of kind of beats the sort of Trump supporters of their own game, really. Do you know what I mean? He's playing them, he's using similar tactics, isn't it? Yeah, I like that.
It was so funny after the Super Bowl and the dark Brandon reference to the Super Bowl conspiracy theories, which I find it hard to believe that the people who are spouting these things actually fully believe them. They just see their political salience. I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy, who I ran into in Iowa, managed to get about 7,000 votes, and then by spending millions and millions of dollars and injecting himself into like the political scene because of that, and potentially the vice presidency conversation. But you see him just sort of, does he really believe that American football and Super Bowl is rigged for some sort of weird political nefarious reason?
No, probably not.
Or is it just about clout?
Well, I don't think he does. But I think you'd be surprised how many people do. I mean, the first time I heard about it was when the New Orleans Saints won the Super Bowl, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, that's it." Now they'll forget about like the levee breaking and etc. So, it was a.
Oh yeah. So, I have no doubt that people do believe that. Yeah. It's just that the loudest voice is shouting about that.
Oh no, they don't believe it. No, they just see that their audience believes it, or a certain portion of their audience do, and they plate it, which is another horrible thing about conspiracy stuff at the minute, is that you've got a lot of people that just genuinely don't believe what they're saying, but they know the beat to hit to sort of to get the popularity, to get the clicks, and to make people angry and titillated at the same time. Basically,
it's not economics.
Yeah, totally. It's a job for people, like outrage farming, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is so distasteful. Like the one sort of thing is that basically, like, can you imagine, like, getting up and going, right, I need to get a tsunami of hatred against me so that I can put my lights on or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's tragic. It's a tragic existence. It's just a shame so many people seem sort of like determined to use that.
Yeah, it's a job now. I mean, I don't know if you saw him. I did a video a few months or so.
That was brilliant. The Grifter one was so good. You need to expand that and do that as a full film, mate.
Yeah, that's a different idea altogether. But it was a bit of a sort of test run, really. But I mean that, to be honest, I that was calculated and thought out. That was people. You don't even need to believe what you're saying. You're like, hang on. If I was to, for example, have a budget to actually make that into a proper show, I'd have somebody sitting there in a office with people working for him, like on different laptops and stuff. Like just stirring up hatred online is what it sells, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. So, just going back to the Super Bowl briefly, Taylor Swift. What sort of influence does she actually have over America? Could she genuinely rally people up to be an army of Democrats or what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, if you look at the polls, one place President Biden is struggling is with young people. And who do young people like? Well, people of all ages love Taylor Swift. I mean, don't we? But like, these kinds of things, they do matter. And what everybody is saying is this is going to be so close that, every sort of marginal issue could work. So if you get, 5,000 Swifties in Wisconsin to vote, and they wouldn't normally vote, that could be the difference.
Oh dear. Do we envisage like sort of? Do you think it will go to a helms and become like a dictator, like in a sort of violent but musical coup? I think that none of us have seen coming. That's where I'm putting my money on for the next election. Taylor Swift.
I mean, if there's one candidate who could win,
yes.
who you would put money on?
I mean, I've heard the Swifties are very dedicated, and they won't.
Oh, very much so.
Like I like Taylor, but I've heard that when people go, say something bad about her, they just get mobbed. And it's
I've got friends who's a massive Swiftie. Hello, Martin, if you're listening. And yeah, I can attest they take it terribly seriously, which is fair play.
She seems like a sweet enough person.
Well, maybe, yeah, but that's the in, isn't it? Like, that's the thing. And then before we know it, we're all on trains. Like, that's where the guillotines from years ago finally get pulled out.
Well, on that note, guys, I need to jump off, but this has been great, and I intend to listen to the rest of it at some point. And again, congratulations on making it this far, and here's to another 1,000 days.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you coming on, and very much appreciate, you were the first interview that I had on my channel, man. It was great.
It was an honor to do it, and I'd love to do it again.
Excellent. And everyone go out and get Mike's book, because it is fantastic.
Thank you.
I have to be honest, I've not finished it, but it's brilliant.
That's okay. I mean, if you read the beginning and the end, that's probably fine.
I'm really sure. I'm just halfway through.
Yeah. All right, guys. I'll see you later.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Bye.
Mike, well, we've still got you. You're from Chicago and you're interested in the far right. We'd be absolutely kicking ourselves if we didn't ask you, what's your opinion of Kanye West?
Oh, yeah, Kanye. Kanye had a listening party here in Chicago. I did not go. I didn't cover it. We didn't really. We haven't done sort of much coverage of him recently. He's such a folk hero here in Chicago. Yeah, people give him still. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a packed house at the United Center, where the Democratic National Convention is going to happen later this year for his listening party. And people are certainly aware of his I don't know, what do we call it, problematic views. But his fans, I suppose, if we thought, if Taylor Swift came out and she started talking about conspiracy theories and telling us that the NFL is rigged by Jews, etc., and then sort of did a half-hearted apology in Hebrew, would Swiftie still be dedicated to her next album? I think so. So that's the dynamic that's happening here. He's a hometown boy. I think probably culturally he has a little bit less influence that he used to, in the music world. But he still has his. I guess that whole thing. You can divide the artists and their political statements, and the weirdness that they sort of project onto the world. That's what's happening here with a lot of these Kanye West fans.
Well, yeah, everyone kind of knows, all of our listeners know, Kanye West is a very sore spot for me because I absolutely, as a music producer, I idolized his work. And there was a time where I had to actually say, like, I cannot separate the art from the person anymore. You know, and obviously it was this DEFCON 3 statement. It's like, okay, I've had enough. I can't actually listen to you anymore. You know, I think.
So you went there. You went to, like, you don't listen.
No,
you can't listen.
I cannot listen to him anymore. And it, like, I got a new set of headphones like a few weeks back, and the first thing I used to always do when I had like a new pair of headphones to test them out is go through like Kanye's catalog, because, like I said, he was just an incredible influence on me for over a decade when it came to making music. Really, he was like a pioneer in hip hop, what he could do. But yeah, no, I can't do it. I contemplated it for a minute. I was like, should I listen to Blood in the Water? No, I can't. I can't listen to it. I cannot do it. It's like, so people need to make that choice, I think, and just actually go, no, mate, you've gone too far. And unless you actually do turn around and become like a Buddhist monk or something and completely change everything, like, I can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, and I kind of get all the different reactions, and you know, you're coming from that place. You know, others will be, you know, will have different experiences that will make them, you know, listen, we could sit here and list a whole bunch of Me Too people, and you know, the people who like who were involved in any sorts of scandals. It's kind of a highly personal decision, don't you think? I mean, would you say that a super fan who's continued to listen to his music, would you be like a little bit icky about that kind of person?
A little bit. I'd be like, what, really? Like, that isn't enough for you? Like what he did? Like even going on Alex Jones and that whole weird wearing the mask on his face and doing the Netanyahu puns and whatever the hell he was doing there. It's like, the dude's gone too far. He's gone way too far. Hitler was a great person, he said, and all this, and you're just like, what are you talking about, dude? No.
I have to be honest.
You know,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The thing that gets me about Kanye West is that we're watching a clearly mentally ill man. Like, and this man commands a huge amount of money and respect and power and whatnot. It's like, why is there not somebody there to help? It's just bizarre. And everybody's like, oh yeah, wicked, this is an entertainment, this is. And it's like, we're literally watching a man spiral out of control in front of us. And it's a very strange scenario.
I think people who have like some sort of elevated spot and are like really seen as like geniuses or powerful, I guess some people just don't seem to want to step in. Like we had the same with Michael Jackson, to be fair. Like he was something clearly was wrong with him, but nobody wanted to get him the help.
Well, yeah, I suppose it's a difficult one as well, actually, because like, you know, and the second that anything does happen like that, you get accused of like the Britney Spears thing, you know, the whole Free Britney thing. And a similar thing happened with Bam Margera. I think basically the second that people were trying to help him, there's a swathe of people or a demographic of people that basically will, again, they like the story, don't they? They like the narrative. They like the idea that, you know, there's something more to this that doesn't meet the eye, but with my seasoned third eye, I can see, basically.
And you look at the people that Kanye was surrounding himself at that time that he appeared. And it's, you know, actually one of the guys, Nick Fuentes, who is probably the most notorious, you know, neo-Nazi in America.
And really in the closet too, which is ironic.
It's very strange.
Hanging out with Ali Alexander.
Yeah, he doesn't live very far from me, actually.
Really?
I don't want to be very too specific, but like I know where he lives.
Up around in 10.
And it's such a quiet neighborhood. And the neighbors, some of them know what's going on in that house, and some of them apparently don't. But he attaches himself to Kanye's circle, and then you have this mentally ill person. Well, I mean, we're assuming he's mentally ill. I don't know. Who's influenced by these very, very weird set of beliefs, and it's in some way, it's just thinking about it now. It's like maybe he just took all that sort of ironic, quote unquote, posturing, and basically just dropped the quotes. You know what I mean? Just went full scale Hitler because that's who he was hanging around with at the time.
Well, I think that's absolutely. Like, he didn't come from nowhere. It probably came from Mile Yiannopoulos and Nick Fuentes and Ali Alexander, because like several reasons. One, they've taken advantage of him, and he's starting he's Kanye West. He's a famous hip hop producer of color. It's almost like you can't accuse him of being racist. It's like, well, yes, you obviously can, but like, do you know what I mean? He's almost childish in the way that it was set up. But yeah, I thought he was taken advantage of, and that's what was the strange thing. Was like, how are these little grifting, like, on they're amoebas on the ecosystem next to like Kanye West, and how have they got so close to him, and how have they managed to get in his ears so much, like grime and worm tongue? Like, it was ridiculous.
I feel like what these people have. I mean, you mentioned Milo Yiannopoulos. There's another one. They realize how they can, I suppose, glom on to clout and how to turn that into money. Basically, yeah. It goes back to the grifting thing you were talking about earlier. And it goes in sort of waves. They can attach themselves to people, and they probably sort of put a load of feelers out in the way that they do. It's a very interesting ecosystem.
Yeah, it's grim, it's grimy, and like, again, that's what I think Vivek Ramaswamy's doing as well. I don't think I think if he does get to be sort of, Trump's VP or whatever, or even a candidate or whatnot, I think he'll be astonished. But I don't think that's his plan. I think he's setting up the network, which is ironically like what Trump was doing when he was trying to get elected, and then he sort of got elected by mistake. Like, do you know what I mean? They're trying to set up that almost like, I'm the victim. It's just a bizarre thing. It's this sort of, we're portraying strengths because that's our values and stuff like that. But we're all really hard done to, and everyone's against us and blah, blah, blah. And it's almost schizophrenic in its sort of presentation. But, that's sort of the point, I suppose.
I was astonished. So I went to a few campaign events right before the Iowa caucus last month. And, I was kind of astonished about the difference between Vivek Ramaswamy's sort of online bro cohort and the people who actually showed up to his event.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to a couple of different events. I went to the Nikki Haley event and, saw sort of like a bunch of suburban moms and whatnot. There's about 70 people at the Vivek Ramaswamy event, which was held in a very working class area in a city called Davenport in eastern Iowa. And of those 70 people, a large majority were children. Maybe half were children because their parents had come there. Now, there's this like tradition in Iowa to go out and like get fed, right, at a political event that happens every 4 years. The people were not sort of like, I guess my point is, they were very working class people who might have been attracted by like, an anger at being woke. Vivek's opening act was Steve King, the Iowa congressman who was thrown out of the Republican Party for being racist, if you can imagine that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it could have been pretty extreme.
He had a number of sort of associations with white nationalists, and eventually he was kicked out in primary.
Still, that usually not enough, but hang on.
Usually not enough. but he was there stumping for Vivek, and the scene was, a little bit depressing. It certainly wasn't like highly wired podcast bros, or even, I would say, even the type of people who Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is attracting, right? You go to an RFK Jr. event and you see the sort of combination, really. There's sort of like, the weird, freaky libertarian guys who probably listen to a lot of podcasts. There's like old people who actually like literally remember RFK Sr. And then there's just like a bunch of anti-vaxxers, right? And that sort of sort. That's sort of his coalition. The Ramaswamy, event, I was expecting a little bit more, I suppose, of the bro contingent, but they were just completely absent.
Strange. But it'd be interesting to see how it all plays out, really, won't it?
I suppose the point of, I guess, is that people who maybe a little bit down on their luck can be sort of sucked into these things, as well. As well,
No, absolutely, because it gives you a bit of sense of purpose. It gives you an enemy, which is also purposeful and stuff like that. It essentially tells you the way the world is. It tells you your position in the world. It surrounds you with like-minded people who tell you that you're incredibly brilliant for thinking the same thing that they do. And it's so, it can be incredibly enticing, basically. But, and that, I think, is the mechanism that is being used more and more with social media to entice people into this. Sometimes under the guise of politics, sometimes under the guise of wedge issues, sometimes just under the guise of like existential threats or perceived existential threats, but
cultural rules, anything like that.
Yeah, quite. It's a grim time, isn't it?
I think that's nailed on the head there. I think it's all about appealing to people who feel hard done by. Like that's actually the key, in my opinion.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's the rise of populism, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, I watched a video a while ago. It was just trying to basically outline what humans need in life, and it was only like if you just boil down to like 5 things, and one of them was a cause, something to fight for, and
absolutely,
that's it. I think that's in a nutshell.
What
happens.
The earlier point, they've turned politics into entertainment. Like they've turned something very, very boring that nobody really understands into wham bang, they're all pouring over the ball. I mean, look at everything you Christmas said at the minute in the past and stuff like that. But like people are turning into that like a soap opera rather than like an event or like the political expression that it is. Crazy.
Yeah,
maybe it was always like this. We just didn't realise it because we didn't get to see it on Twitter.
Well, I think it's just changed gradually over time. The purpose of government is to effectively just organise all our thoughts and wishes and sort of, democratically decide what's best for society and the population. And just over time, gradually, it's become, I could benefit from this. There'll be plenty of people that are in politics that just sort of, they tweak rules just because they've got a business in such and such industry, and it's just not about what's good for the people. It's not about working for the people.
I think that we kind of lost sight about the influence that we have by just like looking at these things on a screen. You know what I mean? I've always tried to, as much as possible, get out and talk to people. So go and talk to anarchists and Proud Boys, and I've been in the middle of riots in Berkeley, and this is all in the book, by the way, plug for the book. But anyway, that is, I spend a fair amount of time being extremely online, but I always try to back that up with sort of real world reporting as much as possible. And when you go into those situations, you just sort of see what sort of messy, blobby things humans are, right? Yeah. That is completely different from how you are mediating it on the screen. And the people who, again, as I'm sure you know, get most sucked down into these rabbit holes are the people who don't have that sort of real world anchor, or don't sort of go out and explore it for themselves.
Well, I didn't,
Was it
time, idle hands, devil's work, etc.
Was it you, Mike, earlier that said something like dopamine from this, or was that Mike?
I think that might have been me.
No,
I think that was Neil.
I didn't, but I endorsed that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's that can be said for a lot of things. I think it's I've never really thought of it like that, but I suppose there's that kick of just jumping online, discovering something new. You're part of, special information.
You get it twice. You get it twice, Steve. You get it once when you find out something. Well, you get it 3 times, right? Okay, you get it once when you find out something new, because or you solve a puzzle or whatever. You get it twice. The second time when basically you realise that there's a group of people who think the same as you, and you've got new friends, and they're going to tell you that you're great. And then basically when there's a response to that, when the mainstream media or whatever says, actually, this isn't true, you get a dopamine response for being angry. And so people look out for things that will wind them up and make them angry. And Twitter's the best example of that. I've said this numerous times. You go online and go, right, I disagree vehemently with Lawrence Fox. Let's go and see what he's got to say. And or whoever, and it's because that's how the system works. The game of Twitter and social media is to keep you in the game forever. It's no point to it, just to keep you there, because that's how they make money. And the way to keep you there is constant pinches of dopamine. That either from finding something out, being told that you're fabulous, or a psychological culture from a group, or being angry. And if you can combine all those things into an afternoon, well, bloody hell, it's ace.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what? I'll give you a fourth hit, which is if you're part of an extremist group like the Proud Boys, you get let's call it a fourth degree, if you will, where you go out on the street and you get to engage in verbal or hand-to-hand combat with your enemies.
Oh, yeah. Very, very good point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was
just going to say, I wanted to introduce another speaker quickly, Poker and Politics. You got something to say, man?
Yeah, what you guys were talking about a moment ago is very important, because it's part of the conspiracy media narrative, is that you are kept in the tension at all times. You are kept in this constant state of we're winning, we're losing, now we're winning again. If you listen to Alex Jones, we've defeated the globalists on Tuesday, and they're going to destroy the world on Thursday.
They're panicking.
Yep. On Tuesday they're panicking. On Thursday, even if we defeat them on Plan A, on Plan B, they'll destroy the world anyways. And it's just, they have to keep you in this constant sense of that the war is being won or it's being lost. And one of the funniest things that I see when I monitor QAnon, and I see these QAnon accounts that are promoting this exact same constant set victory and defeat narrative, is that so many of these promoters will tell their followers, yo guys, take some mental days off, like log off, relax, chill, and then come back in here and get back on the hamster wheel and get back to being dopamine poisoned constantly. But you're going to need to take a break every now and then, because the last thing that any of these people want to do is burn you out. Because if they burn you out, you're either going to do something terrible and go to jail, and then they'll have to call you a false flag deep state MK Ultra sleeper agent, or you're going to burn out and you're just going to give up on them because you just can't take it anymore. The stress from living that lifestyle of perpetually being engaged, perpetually being hyperactively vigilant to see those signs of the Illuminati, it just breaks you and you just give up on it. And now they can't sell you their supplements. They can't sell you their coffee. They can't get anything out of you anymore. So it's very funny that I see so many of them being worried about the mental health of the people whose mental health they are intentionally damaging.
Yeah, very much that. Spot on. Absolutely. But yeah, you're right. It's that tension, isn't it? That's the excitement thing, isn't it? That's, as you say, it's like Mike was saying as well. It's like you don't know that you're in a battle unless there's some sort of indication. And like, there's no point being a proud boy or something unless you've got something to fight against, or you've got an enemy to rail against, or you feel that, like, do you know what I mean? Like, you imagine were those folks in white t-shirts and red hats that used to go around like fighting muggers on the streets of New York or whatever? Imagine how many people would join that in somewhere like Royal Wootton Bassett, where there's next to no crime. Like, nobody would do it. There's no point in being a superhero in like, you know, a really nice place. You've got to do it in the horrible place, otherwise it doesn't really work. And so you've got to create the horrible place, if only in your mind.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
Before we carry on, hold on. Mike, are you okay to carry on for the rest of this hour, or?
6 o'clock my time.
Yeah,
Another 4 minutes. I can do that, definitely. I'm sorry. My name's Mike. Also, I suck. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Mike Wendling.
I can hang out for a little while. Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to open up for another question here from Professor Zeno. I'm just going to get him to invite him on as a speaker. Oh, he's disappeared. There he is. Professor Zeno, how are you doing tonight, mate?
Great. Thanks for having me on. Really enjoying it. Congratulations on hitting 1,000 days.
Thank you.
Boy, got a lot. I have a lot of thoughts. Initially, I want to just say congrats on 1,000 days, and also comment on politics as performance and entertainment. And nobody used the phrase political theater. So it's been like that a long time, but what's happened is people really realize how lucrative it is to participate in it. So you have people wanting to convert, like, hey, all of a sudden somebody's a social influencer, and now they're running for office, because when you run a political campaign, you get a lot of tax breaks. That's in the U.S. I don't know what the U.K. would do for you. So you see this happen. I'll use a term out of social psychology. This social effervescence, where people escalate what they're doing, like right on the street of Proud Boys events, you're saying, but also they escalate socially to get involved with politics locally, teacher, PTA boards now, school district, school board, stuff like that, testing out their political opportunities. It's really weird to watch, I have to say. And then a comment, I'll pass on, because you guys have great stuff. I am driving through the beautiful East Bay of California, San Francisco Bay, that is. And the dopamine, I don't want people to over apply the dopamine kick theory, because when you get angry like that, it's actually adrenaline in the body and norepinephrine in the brain. So it's a kick, man. I mean, some people get it by speaking publicly. Even when I speak all the time, I lecture, talk to people, but even before going on spaces and participating in a new format of communication, going through a 4-way stop at the same time, I get a little surge of adrenaline. It's not.
Yeah, no, fair play. Like, absolutely. That social effervescence that you're speaking of, my understanding of that is it's kind of like
Yes. No.
Are you all right? You're still alive.
Yeah. Sorry,
Thank God.
that was the window. I don't know why the window.
Corpse staying like.
So it is the dopaminergic reward system.
Yeah.
Ultimately, getting wired and strengthened with this behavior. This rewarding behavior does.
Oh, he's gone through a tunnel. Just I would say to say is, as far as my understanding goes, the social effervescence is essentially, it's like the individuation. So it's like the crowd thing. Like if people have read or have heard of Gustave Le Bon, it's the idea where basically you become one of the crowd, and you sort of get like an accelerated hit. Like if anyone's ever been to a rave or a concert or anything like that, and then when the drop happens and all of you are there at the same time, just like hammering it, and you get that sort of rush, or if you've ever been to like a sporting event where the entire crowd as one moves, and it's
like
that
a collective consciousness.
precisely, yeah.
That's serotonin. Serotonin.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, brain chemistry all the way. We get manipulated all the time.
Absolutely, yeah, no, totally, you're absolutely right, mate.
Amazing. If anyone else would like to speak, please request for a speaker. I'm going to try and bring up someone of legend here.
There's a couple of things that you need to know about this guy before we bring him on, if we bring him on. The first thing is he is incredibly, incredibly brave. And the second thing is that he's had simply loads of girlfriends. And yeah, I think that pretty much says everything you need to know about this guy.
Well, I've invited him. We'll see if he comes on. Mike Wendling, one question that I want to kind of, one thing I'd like to kind of sort of talk about tonight is what are the solutions here? What are the solutions we have? How are we going to get out of this mess, this rise of conspiracism? What do we do?
I was hoping that you wouldn't answer that question.
But just from your perspective,
it's basically, all of the above. When you talk to experts in this field, media literacy, education, things that will diffuse the polarization and the heated rhetoric of politics. You can even say law enforcement is a crucial thing in tackling extremism. Obviously, you can't just let this stuff go unchecked if there's violence and murders going on, and like has happened in some U.S. cities. It's a problem that's always been with us to some degree. And I think it's something that is particularly concerning right now because it is so steeped in the politics, particularly in the U.S. and other places as well. But here we're sort of grappling with it head on. I'm not sure. Certainly, it doesn't. It's broadly tied to the MAGA movement and Donald Trump, but it will also certainly outlast that because if you look at American history, there's been conspiratorial movements all throughout American history. They rear their heads from now and again. You kind of have to address the thinking, but then I suppose you also have to address the conditions that cause that thinking to develop.
Yes.
That is very... very complicated, because let's describe those conditions. What are they? Are they increasing inequality? Yeah, sure they are. Then again, Trump's supporters tend to be, on average, a little bit more well off than most Americans. There's something else that's driving the grievance, and there's actually various things that are driving these grievances. That is all just a very, very long-winded way of saying it's super complicated.
Yeah, and that's the problem, isn't it? And it's further sort of hampered by the fact that we live in an age of instant gratification or easy answers or quick fix TikTok things that are 10 seconds long and stuff like that. And people have the attention span of fruit flies, which is. None of this. Noam Chomsky was said this years ago. This is why he stopped appearing on the news and stuff like that, because he says the people want soundbite answers for things that basically take about 5 or 10 minutes to provide the relevant context for and stuff like that. If I'm honest, I think he's probably just a bit of a waffler, but he does have a point. Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare situation, really, in some ways. But oh god,
well, that's where podcasts come in. I mean,
this is it. We sound like Alex Jones saying stuff like that.
Well, this is where I feel like, in some ways, as much as I've always been interested in this stuff, but I certainly don't have the background that you guys have in terms of coming from I was in it and now I'm out, and here's my perspective. Right? It's invaluable. It really is. It's
Thank
like, can you imagine treating drug addicts without involving people who were once themselves drug addicts? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that would just be like insane. So, thank you for what you're doing. You guys are like a huge and probably, probably like that larger ecosystem, which is made up of generally, journalists, fact checkers, and people who are not like not people who haven't been through that shit. You know what I mean? And I think probably the rest of us need to sort of learn a little bit from you guys.
That's incredibly. Thank you very much. That's incredibly touching. Thank you.
I completely agree. I think the dialogue that you guys are causing and generating is the key, and it won't be the overall solution. But really, the more aware you make people of these sorts of things, the less likely they are to sort of fall for a wacky ideology. And also, just it gives like friends and family members a bit of an education on how to approach subjects. Like just having that open dialogue and patience and talking to people, calmly that's the main weapon, I think.
Okay, well, thank you too as well. But one of the things that we try and do, which has probably not been done subconsciously, which probably speaks volumes about us still, is that when we present stuff, we try and give people that same kick that they got when they discovered a conspiracy theory, because we're doing the same thing. We're uncovering, we're unpicking, we're getting to the bottom of something. And so we kind of approach conspiracy theories like conspiracy theorists. I know that doesn't really make sense, but you know what I mean. And
I completely understand that. Yeah,
you know what I mean. That's the fun that we still get out of it. The same fun that we got out of finding out that the Queen was a lizard or whatever, and going, "Oh my God, that changes everything." Finding out where that story came from and why they said it and who they said it and what the circumstances were, and unwrapping it and it's almost like the next level. It's terrible, really, in a way. I sound like that sort of really, really pretentious guy that basically after you can't listen to that punk band anymore. Well, actually, I am that really pretentious guy. But oh shit. Anyway, but you know what I mean?
I mean, look at Alex Jones' bankruptcy filings. Just like comb through those things, and look at how he spends his money and where he gets it from, and the corporate structures. I mean, that will light up the same part of your brain
exactly
as the conspiracy theories do.
Totally.
100%.
And in many ways,
Totally.
it's far more satisfying too.
Yeah, because you're not believing in something that's like completely unreal.
Yeah.
We got a question from Lee. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, hi, Brent. Well, I've listened to yours and Neil's podcast, and I love the way you forensically go through the podcast, you break it down, and it almost helps me to understand how the conspiracists, when they first heard it, how they got hooked on it, and how they did believe it in the first place. But my question to you is, when you usually on the second half, you break it down and you see, why it's wrong. What my question is, when you did believe it, how was it you weren't able to see the other side and see the logic and be able to debunk it in your own head then?
Well, most of it, because you take it to a degree of face value, like the personalities within it. But I'll give you an example, right? Okay, when I first watched David Icke, I sat down with a couple of mates, my mate Chris and my mate Luke, and we had this David Icke DVD, and we put it on just to laugh at him and take the piss out of him, because the only thing we knew about him was he used to vote with the lizards and stuff like that. And he's surprisingly calm, and he says, this is this, and this is this, and this is this, and this is this. And it's not what you expect. You expect it to be like the clips of Alex Jones. Oh, they turned the frogs gay. And when you actually watch like Road to Tyranny or any like Police State or anything like that, he's very calm and measured, and he seems to present stuff. And it's twofold. One, because it's new and because you like it and because it's giving you those dopamine responses, you don't really want to ruin it the second that you've sort of discovered it. So I'm sure there's a degree of like self-delusion, that you essentially just go, but enough to me, they've presented some evidence, that's it. And then again, the community of it all that sort of draws you in. The idea that basically you've got a new outlook on life. It gives you purpose. One of the things, and this is quite difficult to admit, but basically there was numerous times in my life when something wasn't going wrong, and I say, "I just matter because the fucking Illuminati are going to do X, Y, and Z in a few years anyway." Like, you know what I mean? And I know that sounds ridiculous because it is. But basically, when you're 20 and you're going through, and you're not having the best time of it or whatever, you look for answers and you look for explanations and you look for sort of like reasons that, yeah, why is life not turning out the way that I expected it to turn out? And like, you give them all the answers, in a nice little package. And on top of that as well, again, the sort of, like any good propaganda, right? Okay, there's an element of truth to it. You can't just out and out lie. And so this is the thing. You start off looking at things like MK Ultra, and then you look at, say, the Loch Ness Monster, and then you look at JFK, and then you start to expand, and before you know it, you're looking at the Montauk chair and thinking that, yeah, that's potentially plausible, and Hollow Earth, that, yeah, why not, and all of this. And it's because you're getting deeper and deeper into it, and it just sort of becomes a bit of an obsession. It can become a lifestyle, really. I mean, I'm sure Brent can attest to that.
There's in the back of my mind when I speak to some of these people. I speak to a lot of conspiracy in the rooms. There's a suspicion in my room that there's part of them that they don't really believe it sometimes. You know, that it's like you want to believe it, but I think sometimes they don't really believe it. But like you say, they want to still be part of the group.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're like you do get that. Like, it's like the sort of people that like, you don't really like grunge, but you've gone out and bought yourself like a flannel shirt and like stopped washing your hair and stuff because basically that's what everyone else is into. Like, or
there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there is nothing wrong with that. I was a huge fan of grunge when it happens. But yeah, and also when you're in that thing, like I used to knock around with people like Richard D. Hall and Nick Colostrom and Mark Devlin and latterly David Icke and stuff like that. And there were loads of things that I thought, that's bollocks. That's utter bollocks. I know it's bollocks, and you probably know it's bollocks, right? Okay, but you do mental gymnastics. You would look at it as like sort of professional differences. I know that's ridiculous. So, like, you know, he's self-aggrandizing twaddle. Like, but that's the sort of mindset that you get into. Like, oh, we view the world in a slightly different way to everybody else, and of course we're going to have disagreements and stuff like that. And like, so you give people passes in the same way that basically, like, we've all got mates or something that do something shitty every now and again or whatever, and they don't agree with, but you like them as a mate, so you go, right, all right, I'll let that one slide. It's kind of like that.
Okay, so for me, to answer your question, Lee, when I fell down the rabbit hole first, it was in 2003. And I would say, like, from 2003 to maybe even 2013, for like those 10 years, I didn't have a second half of our podcast. I didn't have like access to any kind of materials that were really debunking this type of stuff. The only stuff that we had was like someone like Michael Shermer or something, like never anything big, you know. It was just a few people that would kind of giggle and laugh at us without actually breaking down the conspiracy, telling us where it actually comes from, who's made it up, why it's actually really false. And because I didn't have that for so long, I built up an ideology. I built up this whole like world view of it all, so it's really hard to shatter it. And I had to pick that apart myself. I had to see things not actually playing out as I thought they were supposed to play out in the real world, for me to kind of stop and think, what have I got myself into here, you know. So that's the good thing about today, is that there are tons of resources that can help let people see through this stuff, and which is why we're able actually to do our second half of our podcast, where we're actually able to go back and show how to deconstruct it now.
Yeah, that's true. Like without like the internet, there's no physical way that we'd be able to find all the sort of answers. And sort of to add to Brent's point, like I remember when any debunking thing, I remember excitedly going around to my friend Luke's house and watching, was it Dan Rather doing a debunk of talking about the JFK assassination, and it was billed as like we're actually going to look at the thing, the conspiracy theory, and obviously they decided that like the RV Oswald killed him, and there was some sort of ludicrous thing about, well, the magic bullet, we actually got it wrong because we'd measured the car. So actually, when you look at it like this, it's perfectly plausible and stuff like that. I ain't bothered to go back and check that ever. So it may well be, but at the time, I was like, of course you'd say that. Of course you'd say that. When the BBC did like 9/11 conspiracy stuff and like that, you'd go, well, of course you'd say that. And of course you've missed out this bit and this bit and this bit from Loose Change. Later you come to realise that they've missed those bits from Loose Change because in the later editions of Loose Change, those bits aren't in it anymore because they're not true. Like even by Loose Change's standards, they're not true. Like, so yeah, this is the thing. It's, it was strange. It used to be a lot of effort as well to send off for books and obscure DVDs and things like that.
Yeah.
They pour through hours and hours of crap and like to find like one, and then you get like, and then because there was a lot of crap as well, when you see somebody like, say, a Jordan Maxwell, who sounds like a scholar. He's not, but he sounds like a scholar. And who are you to argue? Because, like, sorry, I don't mean you. I mean, like, me? Who am I to argue with him? Because I don't know fuck all about the dollar. If he says that it's that and it's this, like, do you know what I mean? Like, why would he lie? That was another naive thing that you get into when you first start. It just bypasses your brain. You just go, I can't imagine why anyone would lie about something like this for attention and money.
Well, just the other thing is you just pulled the trigger, a trigger word, JFK. Oh. So with that, we need to bring Poker and Politics back on. Okay. He's just put his hand up. He wants to talk.
Yeah. To me, the JFK assassination conspiracy theory is probably the most damaging in America because once you have made it such that you can accept that the government was mad at the president one day, so they decided to murder him. Once you've attributed that level of evil, that level of malice to our government, it's really easy to say that they pulled off 9/11, that they unleashed COVID, that they did all these things. And the fact that in polling, a majority of Americans believe that a conspiracy killed President Kennedy, and they've always felt that way since the assassination happened. It really did a number on the American psyche. And Rob Reiner and Soledad O'Brien did a terrible 10-part series promoting conspiracy theories and promoting that the government killed Kennedy. But it was rogue elements of the government, so it wasn't that bad. It just goes to show that, like, Rob Reiner's like Hollywood royalty. Soledad O'Brien is a respected journalist. And they just did a series, and no one really cares that they basically put on their tinfoil hats and said that the government murdered the president. And it's wild to me because I was a JFK nut my whole life, and when I finally actually saw the case against Lee Harvey Oswald and the overwhelming evidence against him, it's devastating. It's wild to imagine that basically Oswald got his wish. Oswald, from everything that I've seen, basically wanted to get away with it. And if he didn't get away with it, he wanted to say he didn't do it. And he wanted people to believe that. And here we are 60 odd years later, and people believe it. They don't think he did it. And it blows my mind. And it's really wild. I could talk about it for 100 hours and I won't, but it's just one of the biggest.
Well, no, please come back on the channel and let's do that. If I've ever actually thought it like that, but you're absolutely correct. Like, once you've got that baseline, anything goes. Right. That's slightly blown my mind, man, actually, because I'd never really considered it like that because of course you don't do. You just like, this is the thing and it's this. But yeah, it really alters your perspective on everything. And that's not to say the governments are above doing nefarious things, terrible things, and corrupt things, and such like that. But as you say, it very much weights the scale on everything's before and after, doesn't it? So, wow, yeah,
right, exactly. I mean, it's just, and we literally in the 1990s, I loved JFK by Oliver Stone. I loved The Men Who Killed Kennedy BBC series. I was so invested in all that stuff, and it just, that narrative and everything, it just permeated through everything to the point where it's such an easy way to go from Kennedy to 9/11 to anything else, because it allows you to buy into the what I like to call a grand unifying conspiracy theory, a conspiracy theory that fits everything into it. And once you believe that the government's bad enough to do this, then the government's bad enough to do that, and on and on and on it goes, and there you are. And now you're looking up at the sky and seeing a bunch of like lines, and you're like, oh, there's the chemtrails. They're spraying us again today. And it's just that.
Because why wouldn't they? They already killed the president, so we're just, ants to them or what? Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's how I fell down. Obviously, 9/11 was my big conspiracy that took me down the rabbit hole. It made me think that these people murdered nearly 3,000 civilians in one day, and it just like, once they could do that, then of course they could be satanic pedophiles doing rituals at the Super Bowl or whatever. That's just how it went. Now, right, anyone who listens to the podcast has heard of this legend. He is the man of many anecdotes, of Neil's anecdotes. Chris, please jump up. Let's hear it.
Hey, how you going, guys? Long time listener, first time caller.
Oh, well.
Did you tell them how brave I was, guys?
I did. I told you. I said you were terribly, terribly brave. I let them in on the little secret that you've had loads and loads of girlfriends.
It's true.
It is true. It's like, Chris has been my friend for 30 years. He's an absolute diamond. So, and Chris is often in the room where we record our podcasts and such, sat there giving constructive criticism, mostly in sort of wanker gestures and stuff like that. But it does spur us on and direct us, and he's very much like the referee in WWE. If he's going badly or whatever, I can tell, and he'll give me signals.
I just wanted to say, I think there's another thing that kind of pulls people, because again, it was 9/11 for me that was the big event that pulled me into the conspiracy world, and that was pretty shocking. But the other thing is, for the last 200,000 years, and obviously modern man's probably 100,000 years, we've ran away from big scary things that want to eat us, and that's still part of our psyche. People want to be scared.
Jesus need excitement.
We want excitement. We want fear, because we're hardwired for that for the last 200,000 years.
Yes,
modern society's a little bit safe. It's a little bit too safe from genetically what we're used to and our ancestors. So I think there's also that just innate want within human nature for storytelling, for fantasy, and conspiracies are amazing storytelling. It really is. I mean, as a species, up until, writing on clay tablets, or very much like the Aboriginals in Australia, all information is passed down around the campfire through stories. And I think it's just hard for us to shake that off as a species, and conspiracies kind of give us what we want. To those who are maybe looking at it through a critical lens.
No, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. You're absolutely fine, mate. Totally. This is why people they go to horror films and they go to roller coasters. That's what conspiracy theories are. There was an intellectual roller coaster. They take you in, or a roller coaster through a haunted mansion that's full of satanic pedophiles. There's some sort of metaphor there.
When they one of the Sandy Hook victim's father told me, he used this metaphor. He said it's like mental chewing gum.
Mm.
He said at the end of a long day, and it's a fascinating story. A man's name, he's Leonard Posner. His son was killed in Sandy Hook, and he was an early he found out about the conspiracy theories in Alex Jones early because he was an InfoWars listener.
Yeah.
And he said, at the end of the day, I would just, long day at work, blah, blah, blah. And I like to think about things like the moon landing and, I guess whether 9/11 was an inside job or whatever. It was a way to sort of switch off and put your mind on a different realm. Mm. And then they started talking about his son and saying that his son didn't exist and that it was all ploy to impose gun control. And that's when he became a crusader against Alex Jones and InfoWars.
Yeah. I mean, I think you and Chris have both absolutely nailed it. There's because one of the things that people don't sort of realize is why do people like conspiracies? I've said this loads. Because they're fun. That's why you wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun. If it was like a pain in the arse and like, this is absolutely, I hate this. I hate this. I'm going to dedicate 8 hours of my life every day to this thing that I hate. Well, that's a job, isn't it, really? But anyway, yeah.
In college, when I was, hanging out with all the anarchist punks, late at night, what would go on? Coast to Coast AM and Art Bell and his paranormal and, conspiratorial, a lot about aliens, a lot about moon landing, but then, alternative health stuff. And that's, you can listen to this stuff without necessarily buying into it or considering it or evaluating it or just think it's interesting, right?
Yeah. I mean, but this is the thing, like, there's levels of conspiracies and stuff like that people, I can only speak from my own experience and chatting to people in the past and stuff like that. Like, you'd entertain some, you'd think some were real and some were just wacky and whatnot. But you never really thought any of them were harmful. And then all of a sudden, everyone started taking them really, really seriously. Like, really seriously. Like, and changing views because of them and stuff. And like, the conspiracy was driving their reality rather than reality driving their reality, which is really, it's tough to watch. But again, calling back to what you were saying, I think that's because people were writing stories in their head. Well, one of the interesting things is basically like 9/11 happened and 7/7 and I think Columbine and the shooting at the other I can't remember with Jose Chung. Anyway, and that sort of coincided with the rise of social media and people getting sort of like into this and finding things like InfoWars and stuff like that. And then what happened was, for a long time, nothing happened. Nothing happened. And there was a vacuum where basically ridiculous things like everything's a hoax and Sandy Hook and all this sort of started to fill. And then other things that I think people sort of kind of saw like a dormant market and went, this is ripe. And then you got the sort of rise of, maybe Hitler was right and, Europa and all that silly, leggy stuff and, greatest story never told and all of this. And it totally changed the whole sort of atmosphere. Maybe it was always that, because again, if you go back and listen to sort of older, Alex Jones and Anthony Hilder stuff and things like that, there's a few what you could call dog whistles in there, or views that closer examined are perhaps not as savoury as they are presented as, and so it's a strange one.
Yeah, I completely agree. Does anyone else want to come up and ask any questions? Please do request to speak. And before they jump on, like, does anyone have any like closing thoughts on this? So we'll start here with Mike Wendling.
Well, I suppose, just to add to that, there's always from where I'm sitting, you always have to sort of balance the being open-minded and like not letting your brain fall out of your skull. For a long time, as a journalist, right? There was a long period, and we're probably still in that period, where news organizations don't necessarily know how to sort of deal with these things. You know what I mean? Where it's a whole sort of you don't hear it on the mainstream media because it's false, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, do we report it and say it's false?
Give you oxygen.
We know that exactly. We'll give it oxygen. People will start Googling and they'll go down a rabbit hole, or it'll just stick in their brain and they'll switch it around. That's always going to happen with some people. I think probably we've kind of moved beyond that, particularly because of COVID and the, overwhelming information swirl and disinformation swirl that happened around COVID. Not to mention January the 6th and all the rest of it, but, we're now in it, and we're now in, I suppose, also a media environment where we can have like forums like this and talk like intelligent grown-ups about it and not sort of be too scared of it. Some of this stuff we're not going to be saying on the 6 o'clock news, but there are appropriate forums. And, again, I want to send my appreciation to you guys for really going to the deep on these kinds of things. It's really necessary.
Thank you. But that's really interesting. Yeah. It's almost like what you said is like, because there was so much sort of grifting in the COVID era, which has created its own sort of like, little sort of ecosystem and, monetary system. And like, people are doing well. There's a circuit, they're making money, they're getting fame, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what's interesting is you're suggesting that because they did that sort of so overtly, that's given the wider public sort of more sort of awareness of this type of crap. So, they're burning bright, but the brightest flame potentially burns, the shortest, or at the very least, they've sort of isolated themselves from society, maybe because of their sort of craziness. It's like, do you know what I mean? Like a lot of the times, what we would do in the podcast and stuff like that is use their own words. If you actually transcribe what they say and say it back without the flourishes, without the bombast, without the trickery and the stagecraft, and you just say the words, it's nonsense. And yeah, that's a very interesting thought, Mike.
Yeah, poker and politics. You got anything last to say?
I would just say that like these kinds of conspiracy theories, it's really a lifestyle. It's a mindset. It is something that warps your reality. And I think the most important thing to note about these kinds of things is that they're not just for quote unquote stupid people. I see so many people who are like, oh, these dum-dums believe in all this nonsense and I'd never fall for that. And I was a conspiracy theorist. I bought into 9/11 and all that kind of stuff. But I ran a hobby shop. And at that hobby shop, the main game we played was Magic the Gathering. And at the time, you could make a lot of money if you were a teenager and you were beating up other teenagers at Magic the Gathering, and you could get money for college. And one of these kids, he was like 16 at the time, and he was dominating. And I told him, I'm like, man, you got to get into poker because the money for you is going to dry up at Magic once you age out. And he got into poker he got really solid. And by the time he was 18, he was playing in places where it was legal to play when you were 18. And he was crushing. And he won a tournament for like, I don't know, like $200,000 or something like that. But he was this really dominant poker player. And that game requires an incredible amount of intelligence to be good at. Then he became a day trader. And he was making money day trading. And then he started he was just looking for that next edge. He was looking for that next thing. And the next thing you know, he's thinking that the American dollar is going to collapse, that America's economy is being held together by a bunch of fraud and manipulators. And the next thing you know, he's living on a commune in a pond farm in Uruguay, waiting for America to collapse and telling me to buy physical gold and silver. And it's just like this stuff can get to anybody. Anyone can go down this road if you just don't see that you're leaving reality and going towards the world of madness. And I think that's a very important thing for everyone to like keep inside them, is that you are not immune to this. This can get you.
Absolutely.
Poker and politics. Can I comment on that as well? Do you think it's because he like Alexander he cried because there was no more worlds to conquer. You know, he turned his hand at one thing, dominated, became a day trader. Again, you got to know what you're doing. Dominated, had all the money. Do you think he was just like, right, I've got all this money, I've got all this success, I still don't feel fulfilled, which is kind of a human trait. There's never enough.
It could have been that, but I just remember that when he was day trading, he was just constantly like talking to me about how he was just like, oh, I got this tip on this thing, and I killed on it, and like he was just looking for more sources. He was just looking for a way to stay ahead of the game, and eventually he learned that America was going to collapse any day now. Eventually, like, that was how he stayed ahead of the game, was by getting more information, and eventually he got to that information, and it became unshakable to him. Like, it was just so convincing to him, the evidence they were presenting, and he was just like, oh, no, they just did this thing to patch it up. Now they've bought themselves 6 more months, but then the ship's going to go down, and it was just that, and it just became inexorable to him, and he couldn't shake it.
Interesting.
Amazing. We got another speaker actually jumping up. Not sure which one this is, but fantastic podcast, Tinfoil Tales. Come on, jump up.
Hi, Brent. It's Sauce. I hope you're well.
Hello.
I just wanted to ask a question about more the real world impacts that conspiracies have on vulnerable communities. As an example, last night, a local council in Sydney actually banned drag story time off the back of a grassroots campaign that was led by a guy here called Smokin' Joe, who's been in the conspiracy movement, 15 years probably, and he's well into it. So how do we explain to, I'm going to call normies, just people going about their normal lives who don't realize all of this stuff is part of a global campaign, and something comes through their letterbox telling them that, you know, drag story time is going to turn their children trans, and get scared by it, and then that results in them showing up at council meetings and drag story time being banned. So I guess my question is, how do we actually deal with it in the real world? You know, like beyond Twitter, and we live in a little bit of an ecosystem ourselves. I'd just be interested in thoughts around how to get local communities to be better engaged to understand what's happening in their community before things like this happen.
Well, I just thought, bloody hell. I think the only way, really, is sort of educate people, tell people about it. Like, you know, that's a really tricky one, to be quite honest, because if you can sort of point, one of the effective things sometimes is pointing out the lies, because one of the things that they'll do with the trans thing is that basically they'll show like adult trans stuff and, club nights or whatnot, and say, oh, this is what they're doing in front of children. Or occasionally they'll show these things where there's things called mommy hours, where basically mums with very young babies that have got no idea what's going on go along and have an adult afternoon because, for God's sake, they deserve it. And so, but if you sort of, like a magic trick, I suppose, if you sort of show, well, they've had to lie about this and they've had to lie about this, and you remember Dame Edna Everage, at no point in your life did watching Dame Edna Everage make you go, maybe gays for me. Maybe that's the way. No, it didn't, because that's not how it works, right? It's a ludicrous idea. You point out, you know, pantomime is a major thing in the UK and stuff like that. These are not new ideas. That's what sort of irritates me about the sort of anti-trans arguments and stuff like that. It's like, have you just not been aware of these things? Like, you know, have you never heard of characters like Quentin Crisp and you know, Red Naked Lunch, for Christ's sake, or any of these things? Like, okay, these sort of people's variant sexualities and ways of expressing themselves are not new. Right? Okay, it's not new. And I also, here's the thing, introduce people to sort of like, you know, members of that community Like, I was as ignorant as anybody like this. I come from a small mining town in Nottingham, right? Okay, which is like, the crappy ass town in the city in the bang centre of the UK, right? Okay, it's not terribly cosmopolitan where I grew up, right? Okay, and so I'd not been exposed to trans people at all. And the first time I met a trans person at work, it was like, I get it. Okay, I see. Right, Emily's she's a woman. I get it. I've just spoken to her and just interacted with her, and it just sort of clicked with me. I know that might sound glib or whatever, but it really did. Like, I was just, I get it. I understand now. Okay, that's fine. And so much of it is born out of silliness, and like, I can't be seen talking to that trans lady, otherwise other men will think I might be gay. And it's like, for God's sake, are you really that insecure? That I suppose a lot of people are, really. But so I suppose education and sort of trying to dilute and nullify the propaganda by explaining that, well, no, that's not true, is it? No, that's not true. And also, explaining the differences between a drag act and somebody that is trans. Like, very few drag acts are trans. Like, some are, obviously, but most of them, it's like, the whole point of drag is that it's a man. It's a man dressing up as a woman for comedic and entertainment purposes. It's not designed to why would that man do that? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dress up like a woman in the hope that I can send some other men. Yes. Like, why? What? So that he's trimming down the herd for potential partners? Like, it's ludicrous, but I suppose that's the sort of thing. Talk about it and explain that these fears are completely unfounded.
Yeah, I would also say, as you've just pointed out, Twitter is not the place to do this, but in real life, having real conversations with real people is how you change their minds. Giving them this sort of information that, like Neil's just said, that's what I find is much more productive. Actually having these conversations in real life and not actually on Twitter. Mike Wendling, do you have anything to say on this one?
Well, no, I mean, you hit it on the head there. That's like, how many times have you gone into a conversation on Twitter and it's actually been productive?
Not often.
I'm struggling to think of the last time that happened. It's much more, yeah, I mean, sometimes real life conversations, and, it's a skill, right? A lot of the time, I know quite a few acquaintances or family members who sort of buy into some of this stuff. I find it difficult, actually, if I'm completely honest, to do all the things that I know is right to foster a good conversation in that. When you're talking to somebody like that, it's difficult. It just takes a lot of practice. The more you talk to people, the more practice you get. And the more you talk to people, I suppose, the less time you get to spend online.
Yeah, excellent. Steve, you're from Brighton, and we've spoke about this on the cultural Marxism episode that you're on. So, you got anything to say?
I mean, just what you guys have already said. Education is the key for anything. But it's like you said early on. People don't necessarily know they're being fed conspiracy stuff. So before they realise, they might have already formed an opinion. So getting in there early, I think, and just openly talking to people about stuff. I mean, they wouldn't be able to ban it down here, but that way it's not a problem we've got. Not in Brighton.
So ironically, it's a battle for the mind, which some people might know is quite a famous conspiracy.
Yeah. All right, I think we're going to wrap this up. Poker's had the final say. Mike's had a final say. Chris, anything you want to wrap up with?
Not really. I think I kind of made my comments. But I've just picked up a Baby Ruth bar from the American section in the service station. So for our American friends, is it any good?
Eat it. Find out. You've got it.
I'm going to eat it. I'm a bit full, in all
subjective.
honesty.
You tell us.
Yeah, I've never tried it. It just jumped out at me. So yeah, that's all I've got to add on the map.
Classic American chocolate bar there.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Steve, anything you want to say to wrap this up, mate?
Only just well done. I'm really proud of you guys for what you're doing, because it is really important. I've noticed it's important to remember that there is success when it comes to talking people out of this. You know from yourself. But what I've noticed is the earlier people are addressed, the more chance there is of them. So this sort of thing. Sometimes you won't even they might be on the way down the rabbit hole, and then seeing one of your videos will stop them. So, never underestimate that and never forget that. And well done.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Neil, anything else to say?
No, not really.
No, excellent.
No, just thank you to everybody for tuning in. And I thought we had a really good chat, actually. It was great. And everybody go out and buy Mike's book, and everybody go out and buy other Mike's book. Mike, what's your book called, please?
My book is called Day of Reckoning. You can pre-order it now from my publisher, Pluto Press, or all the other places where you buy books these days. But it'll be out in May.
Fantastic. Definitely give you on my list. So, and
thanks a lot, guys.
And get Mike Rothschild's book, Jewish Space Lasers. And and watch Greg Hall's films. Greg, see you then.
Yeah. I second that. And I hope everyone's going to look forward to our next movie night as well. That's going to be brilliant. You're all going to enjoy it very much. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you, Mike Wendling. Thank you, Mike Rothschild. Thank you, Steve, for co-hosting with us. Poker and Politics, thank you for your comments. Chris, thank you for your comments. And Sauce, thank you so much for joining us as well at the end. Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining.